Hello, I'm Ruari Ewing, Secretary to the ICMA Primary Market Practice Committee. I am joined today by Marc Lewell of JP Morgan, Chair of the ICMA Primary Market Practices Committee, and also a board member of ICMA. I'm also joined by NatWest Markets' David Hopkins, Chair of the ICMA Legal and Documentation Committee. We will talk briefly about current themes for bond underwriters. Firstly, Marc, can you comment on the state of the primary markets and market dynamics over the past year?
Well, great to be here, Ruari. The first thing to comment on, which is stating the obvious really, is how strong, robust and flourishing the primary markets have been over the last year. I think if any of us had asked ourselves in the first couple of weeks of the COVID crisis how strong the markets would be, how reactive the primary markets would be, we'd be very surprised by the outcome we see right now. Last year was a record year in volumes in most markets, and surprisingly, this year is following through with very robust numbers as well. And what's particularly impressive is this has taken place while we've all adapted to new working procedures, working practices. We've always assumed, especially on the investor and dealer side, that working in a busy trading floor is an essential part of the new issue process. And it turns out that in extremis we can manage many of the parts of the new issue process, both on the investor side and the dealer side and the issuer side from a home environment. And we've managed to keep the markets open and active and busy, in fact, with those new practices taking place.
Thanks, Marc. And David, what have been the major topics or issues from a DCM legal practitioner's perspective over the past year?
Thanks, Ruari. Yeah, well, I would also pick on the pandemic, of course. And I think that the debt capital markets and the legal community responded very well in the opening stages of the pandemic in last spring. And particularly thinking of the response, for example, to the CCFF scheme, the England scheme, which required great speed and efficiency from banks and from law firms, etc., to get established many dozens of commercial paper programs under the Bank of England scheme in very, very short time, and was done very well and very efficiently overall. So I think that was very good. But there have been other impacts of the pandemic as well, and ICMA has helped member firms with this, for example, with electronic signing of documents, which went from being, pretty unheard of to being commonplace almost overnight, as well as sort of COVID-19 disclosures in marketing materials and comfort on financials in this unsteady financial market. I'd also pick out a couple of other things which were big for the legal community. One was the end of the Brexit transition period. And again, I think the fact that has gone so smoothly from a legal perspective is testament to the work done in advance by member firms, guided by ICMA, especially around standard language on selling restrictions and legends, again, for marketing documents. And having that in place ahead of the game was very important for us. So I think, again, that was well done by the legal community. And I would also mention ESG and sustainable finance, again, which has really come out of the niche market into the mainstream, and a lot of legal work obviously ongoing on that in terms of, again, disclosure, due diligence and underwriter protections. So I would pick on those three elements, Ruari, and echo what Marc said. Legal work is something which we've been able to do pretty well from our home environment. So to that extent, it's been not a bad experience.
Thank you, David. And now, Marc, how has ICMA's syndicate community engaged with stakeholders and related to our day-to-day work over the past year?
Well, Ruari, I think we've worked together as a community and with ICMA support on many topics over the last year, in particular around the Brexit transition and continuing to implement many of the changes related to MiFID II. But the one that stands out is implementing a new allocation justification recording process, which is something that ICMA and the syndicate community, along with the regulators, have worked on over the past year. That's a process that was ongoing from 2019, and notwithstanding the pandemic, we brought those new practices into the market in the latter part of 2020, and they're now very much normal market practices being used across the European time zone, and it's great to see that taking place.
Indeed. Thanks, Mark. And David, from the legal perspective.
Well, Roy, I think that the debt capital markets has always been a very collaborative market. One of its attractions for me, and I pick out the work of the Legal and Documentation Committee, which has over 20 member firms on it. There's also a wider circle with another 20 firms, and we have working groups. And this is a tremendous focal point for member firms to get together to meet and discuss matters which affect the industry as a whole. And I mentioned earlier about how important it's been in terms of efficiency and time saving and cost saving to have had that work of ICMA there in producing the standard language, for example, for Brexit transition. And I would like to call out the great work which is done on behalf of member firms and ICMA by law firms such as Linklaters, Allen & Overy and Clifford Chance, which is a tremendous asset to us all. And I think the last thing I would point out was the great access which ICMA gives member firms in terms of access to regulators, especially at this time of such change. So, for example, liaising with the UK authorities on the UK listing review, or with MiFID II product governance review. That sort of thing is a tremendous help. So that we've seen a lot of that collaboration, particularly in the last 12 months.
Yeah, no, indeed. Thanks, David. I suppose moving on, and looking forward, Mark, what do you see as the big topics and challenges for the syndicate community looking ahead over the next 12 months? Well,
there's always something new, Ruari, and there's always a new challenge for Syndicate, and there was a new challenge for ICMA and PMPC. I think as we look ahead to next year, there will be a reactive element with new things coming up. But in terms of the things we know about, I think the SFC in Hong Kong's new book building code of conduct is something that ICMA has spent a lot of time on with the syndicate community in Asia. The new ICSD syndicated closing process, I think, is something that we'll all want to work together to implement smoothly. And then finally, and David mentioned it before, the biggest topic we've seen really in the last year, this year, and into next year is going to be around ESG. It's a huge focus for all of our issuer clients and our investor clients. And I think as a community, we all are very grateful to the leadership that ICMA has played in helping sort of bring that market to an early part of maturity.
No, thanks for that, Mark. And David, looking forward from the legal perspective.
Yeah, I'd pick out four things, Ruari. We keep coming back to it: ESG, sustainable finance. Recent developments there. ICMA is still ongoing in terms of disclosure, underwriter protections, minimizing the risk of greenwashing, etc. That'll be ongoing. Again, as Mark said, the new ICSD's syndicated closings model, it's pretty much been the same for 30 years. So you're looking forward to working across the new issuance community there to realize efficiencies for all market participants from that. I would also pick out regulatory divergence, perhaps going forward. We're going to see in the next 12 months a review of the UK and EU prospectus regulation, and that will be interesting to see how that plays out. And we may also have a review of MAR and of PRIPS. And lastly, perhaps just to mention for electronification of issuance procedures and whether opportunities arise as we continue to look into that.
No, thanks. Well, that was very interesting. And I suppose all I should say now is thank you very much both for participating.
Thank you.